Welcome in, everybody, to Fantasy Pros. This is the Fantasy Football Podcast. It is me, Joey P. Joe Pisapia. We got a fun one for you today. Today, we're going to look at the sophomores. That's right. Freshman year is tough for a lot of people. Sometimes people get stuffed into lockers. Sometimes they get swirlies in the bathroom. And sometimes they come out like rock stars freshman year. But does that mean that sophomore year is going to be good? Well, we're going to talk about all the players who were rookies this year and what might be in store for them, good, bad, or maybe push or indifferent here in 2026. To help us do it, Jake Ciely of The Athletic and one of my favorite people, Laquon Jones from NFL Network. I love getting to talk with Laquon. It's been a while. My team made it one step further than your team to the Super Bowl this year, so I do love that. But your guy did get the MVP over my guy, and I told you, Quan, if I had a vote, I would have voted for Stafford because I'm old and I respect my elders now, and I want him to make sure before Matthew Stafford walks off into the sunset that he got that award. It's like when Al Pacino won the Oscar for Scent of a Woman. Was it his best work? No, but you want to make sure he gets some hardware at some point for the Lifetime Achievement Award. I'm good with that. How are you doing, Laquon?
I'm good. This is why you my guy, man. I love coming on the show with great energy, and you got my boy Jake here as well, where we can have conversations for hours, man. I really love this crew for this show that you got me on today, man, because we're going to have some fun.
Yeah, we are. And, he's throwing some shade at Drake May before this. I don't know if Drake May's really your guy. I don't know. What'd you think of Drake May in the Super Bowl? I was like, I didn't think he was good in the Super Bowl. But I'm not worried about him. I would take him over 28 other quarterbacks.
You can't peek behind the curtain so early in the show, man.
There is no curtain on this show. Everybody who watches the show knows I don't do curtains. That's why we're so popular. We don't believe in that stuff. Jake Ciely, I'll let you get in on this too. Sophomore slumps, very difficult. What was your best memory as a sophomore in high school, Jake? Did you have a great sophomore moment? How was your sophomore year?
You know what's funny? It was my best basketball moment of my life, like legit. And
Nice.
It's the last year I played basketball because I'm old enough that like 3-and-D wasn't a thing yet. And I mean, you can see that I don't jump very well, even though I'm 6'1". And so if you can shoot a 3-pointer and play some defense, you're cool. But once I lost my 3-pointer, I was done. I didn't play after my junior year. But as a JV player and as a sophomore, that can tell you how bad I was, is we played knockout versus the varsity. And I beat the entire varsity shooting 3. We actually kept stepping back when the last guy I was against. I mean, we're hitting like the way out almost half court Steph Curry type shots at the end. And I beat the varsity team.
This is weird. I was thinking like your best basketball moment was something like in game. This is a practice?
No.
That was a bit?
Yeah, I would actually have to play in the games for that to happen.
I see.
My career point total
Practice?
point total is 13, by the way, just so you know.
Wow.
3 3-pointers, a field goal, and 2 free throws. That's how. So I actually have to play to be able to. Hey, Joe, you want one more thing? I'll give you one more. I had hair down to here. No, I had hair down to here. And the Ciely shot that everybody mimicked me for, like, because I would shoot and I have to push it out of my, the shot with the.
Laquon, you didn't know that Jake was the original High School Musical inspiration. He didn't know that. You didn't know that.
I'm
Zac
learning more about
Efron
Jake. Keep going.
studied all about Jake Ciely. That's the inspiration for the role.
I am old enough.
That is absolutely true. All right, we're going to get into the players. We're going to start with the running backs. Before we do, we got a fun giveaway, a championship belt. Could be yours right now. And of course, it's a great time to reward the winner in your league or just keep it for yourself. From Trophy Smack, the #1 destination for epic fantasy football hardware, the massive gold-plated belt is a statement. It's bold, it's heavy, it's guaranteed to turn heads. And if anybody likes a good belt, it's all 3 of us. I mean, you're talking about 3 of the big wrestling guys here. We love the pro wrestling stuff, so we love rocking the belts here. And you should have one of these too. So how do you win it? Subscribe to the channel. Drop your comments below. That's it. That's all you got to do. Pretty easy, right? And it could be yours from Trophy Smack. Again, ring the bell till it goes ding, so you know if you are the big winner of the championship belt. Subscribe to the channel, ring the bell, and of course, never miss a piece of content here on the channel when you subscribe and set the alerts. All right, let's start with the running backs here. We'll start with Ashton Jeanty. Laquon, obviously, we were all very excited for Ashton Jeanty. It seemed like it was going to be good, but unfortunately, what was so bad was the Raiders' offensive line. He finishes RB 13.5 point PPR, currently RB 7, which feels about right. We're going to get Fernando Mendoza most likely as the new quarterback there. We have Clint Kubiak as the new coach, which makes me very excited too. So we're replacing a coach who, probably system-wise might have been a little outdated. Certainly offensive coordinator, a nightmare. What the hell they were thinking about with that hire, I'll never know. I'll tell you what, the best job you can have, Laquon, is offensive coordinator in the NFL. You just get hired all the time. It doesn't matter if you're any good at it. Matt Nagy got another job. Chip Kelly gets jobs everywhere. Anyway, I know, man. Let's talk about Ashton Jeanty.
Tell me how you really feel.
It blows my mind the amount of failure that people have as offensive coordinators, and they keep getting hired other places. That's why I am throwing my hat in the ring as offensive coordinator.
Real quick before we talk Jeanty, Joe, I mean, the proof is in the pudding with John Harbaugh. I actually think what they're doing is smart. They brought in Roman because it's, hey, you're good at the run, you suck at the pass. They bring in Nagy because they're like, hey, you're good at the pass, you suck at the run. So you have two offensive coordinators to fill one spot.
No, you have no offensive coordinators. You're trying to make one out of two people. That's what you're trying to do. Laquon, let's talk about Ashton Jeanty here. Do you think this ranking too aggressive, just right? How much of an impact do you think Kubiak's going to have? And obviously the offensive line via free agency in the draft really has to be the defining factor here, right?
I think it's just right, because when you look at what Clint Kubiak has done in the recent years, you see that he got career highs out of Alvin Kamara when he was with the New Orleans Saints. You see Kenneth Walker. We've seen him in the playoffs have that stretch as the guy, and we see the potential of the run game being excellent. And we know Jeanty in that outside zone scheme is going to be able to feast. I mean, honestly, it all comes down to what you said before. It's the offensive line. That's the only thing that'll make me scare away from his rankings, but I'm all in. I honestly think Jeanty, with the beefed up old line, with Clint Kubiak on the sticks, we're going to see this offense really move forward and be able to see Jeanty hit that full RB1 potential. I think it's a workhorse season. I think last season when we saw him get sprinkled with them targets, being force-fed to have some type of fantasy relevance some weeks, because we know he was running into a brick wall like 50 times. It was one of those things like, boy, do you seen that boy yards before contact per rush? It's at the bottom of the table. Now we're looking at a guy that we see can break tackles, juke you out of your socks, make you look like what just happened. Like, bro had 860 yards after contact. That's among the elites up there. So we know that this boy is a problem. It never was question of his talent. It's just more so the situation around him. So hopefully Clint comes in, cleans this up, man, and then they basically had me, you, and Jake out there as offensive linemen out there trying to block, right? Like, come on, what are we talking about?
Yeah, I think 750 of those 860 yards you were talking about were also in the backfield for that contact. And that's pretty much where that was. Hey, Jake Ciely, let's talk about Ashton Jeanty. Volume is king. He's going to get volume. So let's talk about it a little bit here. What do you think that volume is going to look like? And in terms of the improved quality of it year over year?
Yeah, I feel like this is not quite, but close to peak for me. I'm a little bit lower than this, mostly because there's a lot of questions as of today. You brought it up. It's the offensive line. Now, granted, Colton Miller missed almost the entire season, but Parham, their arguable best guard, is a free agent, so they're going to have to address it. As you said, you already stated the biggest part of this. The biggest factor is the offensive line, and you talk about the volume. Well, the volume was already there. The only person with a higher running back touch percentage was Jonathan Taylor, 84.4 to 84.3 for Jeanty. What Laquon just said, we knew 100% through the first 3 weeks. He actually had over 100% of his yards were after contact because he was getting negative yards before contact. And that was back when Colton Miller was actually in the mix. So there's a lot of factors at play. Yeah, the offense should be better. Yeah, everything's good. But the workload's there. And the point that I'll compare it to is why I feel like this might be peak RB7 is because RB8 in points per game in his last season with the Giants, Saquon Barkley. I think that's a really good comparison. Peak Saquon Barkley on the terrible Giants with offensive line issues, questions about their offense. I think that's kind of what we expect. So as of today, I have a few other guys, including Laquon's boy, Kyron Williams, in front of him. But I think that, I think he could get to RB7 and maybe even RB6, but I think this is kind of pricing him at everything has to go right. We have to get better help on the offensive line. So I just have him a few spots lower.
All right, let's talk about RJ Harvey. Obviously, patience prevailed eventually, but finishes RB8 over the last 6 weeks. However, unfortunately, those who had the patience might have missed the playoffs because it took a long time for him to be really useful. So if you picked him up in a trade, you picked him up on the free agent wire, somebody dropped him and you picked him up, then all of a sudden RJ Harvey was useful for you down the stretch. Currently RB16 in the ECR. Jake, is that too low considering what Denver looked like last year and what the last 8 weeks looked like for RJ Harvey?
I think it's too low if everything remains the same. The biggest question here is, I think, why he's there. At least I don't want to speak for everybody and get obviously Laquon's opinion, but I feel like everybody's hesitant on what Sean Payton might do. And that's the issue here is we basically had RJ Harvey's backfield to himself because we had the injury in the backfield, and that opened up everything for Harvey. You go back previous to that, and this is why people were dropping him, is because it was a timeshare. And of course, Harvey was also getting to the mix of being a rookie in the NFL.
Sure.
And Harvey does fit the Sean Payton style of the Alvin Kamara, but even Alvin Kamara, he was paired up with Mark Ingram for years. There was days that he had Sundays that Payton had 4 active running backs. Like he uses everybody, but that depth chart behind him last year, once it was just Harvey, and then everybody's like, well, it might be Jaleel McLaughlin. Like I even said, take a flyer on him in waivers because it's Sean Payton. But nobody held the candle to Harvey, and including the fact was really interesting. He had a really high success rate and carries inside the 5, not just inside the 10, but inside the 5, which is what we like to see. The only reason I think people are hesitant and have him around this 15, 16, 17 range is because what if they go sign a significant name and just turn it into a timeshare? What if they draft somebody in the second round and turn it into the Mark Ingram timeshare? I think that's why. So if you're looking for the potential biggest reward right now, if you're drafting, you take him as a fringe RB1 because you just mentioned RB8. But we also know that that comes with plenty of risk because it's Sean Payton.
All right, so Laquon is RB16 in the ECR. Do you think that is the baked-in consensus, expecting there to be somebody else to share this backfield with? And if there isn't, then where does RJ Harvey move up to in terms of breaking up through that 16?
16 is where it's at. Because watch out, I'm calling it now. Tyler Algier is on the way. Tyler Algier is a free agent.
Hey, don't do that.
Forget
Falcons
16.
do not
I'll
have
put him at
bread.
27 then, if that's the case.
Algier can get you those ugly yards, man. And Algier has that same type of vision as a J.K. Dobbins, and that's all Sean Payton cares about is converting on third down, being a guy that can block, and also get peppered with semi-much of targets. And I think that is the Tyler Algier mold that is the missing piece. Like, I think this is going to be a rotating wheel until they find a long-term, situation as a backup. But Harvey, to me, is the most talented back in that backfield. Like, he is one of the basic reasons why that backfield was able to have any type of success, being that he's able to get involved in the red zone as a pass catcher. Like, that is one of the underrated things about him. He's not just getting the carries inside the 5 or inside the 10. He's also rolling out in the flats and taking it into the end zone as well. So having that upside, PPR formats, I'm never going to shy away from Harvey just based on, I just love the pure talent of what he does as a receiver, as a runner. When he does bounce outside, when it is successful, he may hit that wall 5 times, on the outside zone pitch and all that other stuff. But at the end of the day, he busts one off. It's likely going to go to the crib. So I'm always going to believe into him. But having him at 16, I think that's a solid place with or without the Tyler Algier, addition.
As the kids like to say, low key. I really like it if Algier ends up there. That's actually really good.
Yeah, I love that one.
All right, let's talk about TreVeyon Henderson. And speaking of explosiveness and upside, we saw it, but then I don't feel like we saw a whole lot of it in the playoffs. Now, I get it. I understand we're talking about playing the defense. Margin of error is very small here. Ramondre Stevenson's role in his contract, you can even talk about that. But will we see kind of the shackles come off a little bit and we can see full TreVeyon Henderson? Or do you think sophomore year we're really looking Laquon more like possibly more of the same, very games dependent in terms of game script or opponent dependent when it comes to year 2 of TreVeyon Henderson? Maybe it's not. Maybe it's totally different and it becomes more of a 70-30 thing. What does your percentage look like for that Patriots backfield, and how will that impact his ranking going forward?
It's exactly what we've seen. Like, I think we need to get ahead of this. Like, we know he's talented. He has the look. He has the upside, but he does not have the juice. I mean, Stevenson's bishop in this. Like, there is no way that we can sit here and see what the coaching staff has told us, has shown us, that it's Stevenson's backfield. That boy is locked in until 2029. We got a long ways to go before we start seeing that snap percentage get above 45%. And that's exactly where we need to have Henderson at if we're going to have some fantasy relevant weeks for him to be a valuable flex. Like, I think, honestly, we're going to keep playing this game because we know the talent's there. We all want it. But the coaching staff has told us, no, I'm not listening to you. I'm going to do what I feel is right for the team. Like, this is real life football that they're playing out there in the X's and O's. They don't care about our fantasy rosters. Like, I coined TreVeyon Henderson in the preseason as one of the most electrifying prospects in sports entertainment, my guy. Like, we all know it's there, but they will not unleash it because they have a good thing going with a reliable back. Yes, the fumbles are there for Stevenson, but he cleaned it up. That became a story of the past after a while. Like, him and Kyron Williams were very similar on the path of like, hey, these guys have fumbling issues. They're about to lose their jobs to backups. Now look at, they cleaned it up. They're their starting running backs now, man.
All right. So, Jake, Pat's backfield, more of the same, or maybe something evolving there potentially in 2026?
I think more of the same, and Laquon wasn't alone. I was team TreVeyon Henderson's explosiveness, and I know that there were very many people that were anti-TreVeyon Henderson. Maybe the draft cost might have been part of it, but everybody knew the talent. But looking at next year, we're talking sophomores, Jeanty. We're going to talk about the next running back, Hampton, Harvey, Scadaboo if healthy, Judkins if healthy, all in front of TreVeyon Henderson for me. And I'll throw one more at him too, a 7th rounder, and 8.8 cap hit. 1.3 dead money if they get rid of DeAndre Swift. If Monangai is the lead for the Bears, he has
big jersey.
And that's the thing, because if you look at it, Stevenson higher, all these numbers are he's higher percentage of rushes for 10 plus yards, touchdown per touch, yards per touch, touches when neutral or down. You talked about the game script, yards per route run, and explosive play percentage were all higher than TreVeyon Henderson. So even if that sees an uptick for Henderson next year, he's just trying to battle even with Stevenson at this point.
All right. So maybe the guy we're all probably most bullish on going into 2026 is going to be Omarion Hampton, right? Because we assume the offensive line will be healthier. We have Alt and Slater coming back from injury. You have Mike McDaniel taking over too. Great offensive mind. I really like this hire. I think this is very exciting. And I give Jim Harbaugh a lot of credit for this because it feels like a very non-Jim Harbaugh kind of hire. And I think it's good. I think he needs to get something a little fresher in there, a little bit more innovative in there. So right now, he could be a top 5 guy currently as RB7. Jake, I know we've had some early discussions about Hampton. So where are you at in terms of this transition in this new offense with Mike McDaniel and what it could mean for him in 2026 in year 2?
Yeah, I looked at 4 games for Hampton with 65% of the touches or more, 15.3 fantasy points per game with 3 touchdowns, including 17 for 113 yards and 19 targets. That all lines up perfectly for McDaniel. Here's the downside where I'll say, don't go crazy. Like, don't put Hampton inside the top 5, because the one thing that we do know, McDaniel already had this issue with the Dolphins, and then Harbaugh already had this issue as the leader of the Chargers. Plays per game, part because they run the ball so much, but always at the bottom of the league in game script or neutral game script, bottom league in plays per game. Just whether, it really doesn't matter. Honestly, I was about to go down the list. It really doesn't matter. You're just talking about bottom third, even worse, potentially in the 30s. So he'll get the work. He'll be the guy. He'll be Achane on this team with a little bit more. But the thing with Achane is he has to be as productive on a per touch basis, which he can be because Hampton is that good. But that's why I say don't put him inside the top 5, because Achane still has that floor like we just saw 2 years ago where he could get knocked outside the top 5 just because he wasn't as efficient per touch. So top 10 is where I have him, but I just think that the excitement could continue to build this offseason and possibly price him out of our hand.
Well, it's funny, Jake, because, looking at the rankings right now, you have Achane in a system that we're still trying to figure out what it is, right? Who's the quarterback? It's a new head coach, new world there. Then you have James Cook right now, Ashton Jeanty, who we already talked about, and then Omarion Hampton. So, Laquon, who's the best value there? Because to me, if you wait it out, it feels like it's Hampton at 8.
I would have to say, if it's Jeanty, James Cook, and Hampton, I like James Cook.
Because I still like James Cook, but for the sake of the sophomore conversations, like, would you rather have Jeanty or Omarion Hampton a couple picks later? I mean,
Hampton.
I'd probably go Hampton because I think Hampton, in a sense, we're going to get somewhat similar of an Achane workload and types of targets he's going to see. They're going to be valuable targets. Like McDaniel's from that Kyle Shanahan tree. We talked about running backs getting those targets in the red zone. If he's going to be in striking distance, he's going to be heavily involved why this team scores. So I think there's going to be a lot of touchdowns strapped to Hampton. Like, he's another one of those freak athletes. He can handle the workload as if he's a Derrick Henry and also contribute in the passing game and find himself breaking tackles and being explosive. This dude is a freak athlete. Have you seen the photo of him shaking Jim Harbaugh's hand? Like, oh my God, Joe, I comped this guy to Brock Lesnar. The dude is a freak athlete, bro. Like, it's one of those things that I wouldn't be surprised if I see Hampton doing a shooter star press off of an offensive lineman into the end zone. That's how crazy this guy is when healthy and having the right tools on the old line to block for him. So I'm all geared up for Hampton the sophomore year, but like Jake was saying, he could get pulled up into that top 5 conversation where you have to start making these business decisions like, hey, do I really, really like this guy to take him over Devon H? And do I really, really like this guy to take him over some of these guys like Gibbs, or even having the conversation about CMC? Like, I think that's where we might see him get pulled up by August.
All right. One more running back to talk about here. We've got Quinshon Judkins. I was out on Judkins. He had some of the personal stuff going on, Laquon, going into the year. He was missing training camp, and I usually, rookies missing training camp doesn't feel like a good beat to me. Then he came back, and he played very well, and I was like, oh, man, I'm going to take an L on this. And then he kind of disappeared in the second half, right? Really just kind of fell off in terms of fantasy productivity. Now, that could be all the quarterback transitioning. That could be a million different variety of reasons for all that. So Quinshon Judkins with his stock going into this year, are you comfortable with where it's at? Do you feel like at the 23rd overall back, that's too low potentially for what he brings in terms of talent? Or is it just right? Because it's actually a few picks later than guys like TreVeyon Henderson. Javonte Williams was very steady last year, but I mean, is Quinshon being undervalued, overvalued, or is he just right?
He'll probably just right there. You said 23rd, right? Like that's at the line where you start getting into some high-end backup running backs, guys like the Zach Charbonnets of the world, right? Like that's kind of the area where you start making no decision. Do I get depth? And I think with Judkins, like this is another situation. First of all, it's the Browns. You got to figure out what they're doing, what their identity is on offense. They have 4 offensive linemen right now that are free agents. And I think a lot of his, I would say, back end of the season kind of downfall was the constant musical chairs of the quarterback position. If you look at the 3 games he played with Flacco, he was averaging 16 fantasy points in those games, 4.8 yards per carry. Then you look at the Dylan Gabriel saga, 10 fantasy points per game. And then the 5 games with Sanders, 11 fantasy points per game. So not much change from the rookie quarterback situation. I honestly think if you're going to sit back there and have Joe Flacco air you out all downfield, because you got to respect Joe's arm. But if you get these young guys coming in with a new head coach and a whole new staff and trying to mold this identity of this Browns offense, I think you're going to be looking at somewhat similar of the issues that we had on the back end of the season for Judkins. So I don't feel like he's going to be pulled up into the areas of where we're talking about. Do we take the shot on Harvey? Do we take the shot on Henderson? I think Judkins is probably the last of that bottom barrel of the sophomores that I would have interest in.
Yeah, Jake, to Laquan's point, it kind of does feel a little bit like we're in a cycle there in Cleveland. I mean, I'm sure Cleveland Browns fans will certainly reiterate that it feels like that. But again, the talent is there. It's just whether or not the opportunity in the situation will lend itself to more fantasy productivity. Do you think it could in sophomore year, or is it just more of the same?
I think it could, obviously, depending on health. That was kind of a gruesome injury for Judkins, so we're assuming that he's hopefully going to be ready for week 1, but 100% for week 1. And assuming so, I think it's a fair spot. I actually have him a little bit higher because, drafting or ranking this early, like I'm going to assume I'm going to shoot for like the RJ Harvey situation. Like I'm going to shoot for potential upside here. It might bite me, but we have plenty of time to adjust for that. The one thing about Cleveland is their offensive line was just as bad as the Raiders. So everybody talking about the things with Jeanty is Cleveland's right there, lockstep with them. They bring in Todd Monken, as we know, but the Schweitzer situation of it is Monken's going to not really focus too much on the passing game. That's what we have Schweitzer for the run game for Monken. So I think the fact that what we've seen the success for the Ravens is why a lot of people have hope for Judkins. The interesting thing here is we're also talking about Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry versus question mark and Judkins. And that's going to be a big factor. And the interesting thing, the one thing I'll add to is they progressed over the 3 years with Schweitzer at the Ravens situation with they moved from man to zone more year by year running style. And I think that would work if they carry that over, that they were almost 50-50 zone at the end, just to mix things up, especially with Judkins' ability. But if they go man heavy, I don't think it works because the offensive line has so many issues. So I think that's part of an answer that we probably aren't going to find out, unfortunately.
All right, we're going to talk about the sophomore wide receivers in just a moment. Before we do, I want to shout out our sponsor, Hard Rock Bet, the sportsbook of Florida. I know it's tough without football. Everyone's a little depressed nowadays, but maybe the thing you need to shake you out of the winter doldrums is a little hoops, a little hockey. Baseball's around the corner. WBC coming up. A lot of fun stuff going on. They've got same-game parlays. They got live betting. They got everything over at Hard Rock Bet. It's the official sports betting partner of the Miami Heat and the Orlando Magic, so they know their basketball as well. And if you haven't signed up with Hard Rock Bet, there's never a better time. New signups can double their winnings on their first 10 bets, $50 max. That's right. So if you've won $100 on your bet, make it 200. That sounds pretty good to me. That's how math works, boys and girls. Hard Rock Bet app also is the only legal sportsbook in the state of Florida. It's also live in Arizona, Ohio, New Jersey, Indiana, Tennessee, Virginia, Illinois, Colorado, and Michigan. More states coming every single day. And plus, Hard Rock Bet offers new promos every day. So whenever you're listening, just open the app, see what's going on that day over at Hard Rock Bet. But you can't do that if you don't download it. So download the Hard Rock Bet Sportsbook app today. All right, gentlemen, let's transition to wide receivers. Tetairoa McMillan had a pretty damn good year, over 1,000 yards for him. He's currently ranked as wide receiver 14, which I think is kind of fair. I want to try to make the case here, Jake, if you can, for something of top 10 range, because I don't think top 5 with Bryce Young as your quarterback is achievable. I just don't. Top 10, though, I think could be achievable, but we got to figure out what that draft looks like, I think, for Carolina, and what other kind of building blocks they continuously push forward here in terms of Bryce Young development. So is there a range here where you could carve out something even better in year 2 for Ted?
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought up the top 5, because the original thought process we were talking about before the show was the percent chance of top 5. And I was going to say big fat 0, because
I was going to say single digits. Well, injuries happen, crazy things, but yeah.
Oh, we're getting 17 wide receivers hurt like this.
I don't know. I got a bunch of them last year. You want to see some teams, some rosters?
I
some
said 17 specifically for the top 10.
Drop the YouTube comments. Laquon had 7 on one team, I think.
He was just wide receiver 26 in points per game. So to get to top 5 is why I said 0.
I think it's impossible. But 10, maybe you can make the argument.
So, well, that's the difference. So top 5 is 5 points per game that he needs an improvement of. Top 10, he needs still 3. 2.8 if you really want to get technical. So looking at that, I still say slim, because you brought up the biggest issue. His quarterback is Bryce Young. If this was, even the Cardinals situation, like, well, to get rid of Kyler Murray so we can be excited about Michael Wilson and Marvin Harrison with Jacoby Brissett because he's just going to throw a ton. Cool, whatever. Like you said, Jacoby Brissett on the Panthers and throwing to him all the time, because as we saw the one game where Marvin Harrison came back healthy, he actually got the vast majority. And I know we're not talking about, but I'm bringing this up for comparison's sake. He got the vast majority of the targets, not Michael Wilson, but that was an offense that when you get that volume of targets, you're also producing top 10 value. And I think that's the issue with Tetairoa McMillan, is that the touchdowns were higher than I expected, but that line was almost exactly, Joe, you and I talked about a few weeks ago, was almost the exact line I projected from receptions and yards. I just don't see him getting to, what do you really need to get to top 10? You need what he just did in receptions, but now you need 12, 13, maybe 100 yards and like 9 touchdowns.
He was a touchdown nothing burger for half a season. So that also hurt him too.
So, if let's say he gets 70, he gets 200 more yards. Does he really get to 10 receiving touchdowns? And I know it was a vast difference in the second half of the season, but it just comes down to Bryce Young. I played the game of Bryce Young basing off 2024, saying like, I really liked what I saw when he came back from injury because he started to play more comfortably. That went out the window in 2025. He went back to old Bryce Young. So maybe there's a slim chance.
But they got in the playoffs. They're
10%.
They're not going to replace a quarterback who went to the playoffs. That
10%
happens. All right,
10% for top 10.
So is it 10% for top 10 for you too, Laquon? Is that where you're at?
About 8%.
No, you're even lower than Jake.
No, I'm only lower because everything and every point that Jake made, it's Bryce Young. Like, it's the inconsistent play week in and week out from Bryce Young. And then there's also another emerging factor in this wide receiver room, and it's Jalen Coker. Mark my words. If Coker is back, signed, and paid, he is going to be able to be the wide receiver 2 for that team, where I think the valuable targets may be spread out between Tetairoa McMillan and Jalen Coker to where top 10, I don't know, bro. Top 15, we can make the case. Like, I think top 10, he would have to be in the touchdown department more often than not. He would have to be getting like 120 something targets and 85 catch. Like, he would have to be in that range of where on a week-to-week basis, Bryce is going to be lights out. He's going to be leaving games with at least 2 touchdowns, not just 1 or nothing. It's one of those things that it's all strapped to Bryce Young. And I think going into next year, I can't sit here and try to paint this picture that Tetairoa McMillan is going to be a week-to-week wide receiver one.
All right, Emeka Egbuka, another guy too, hot start, where you looked at him and you're like, wow, this is unbelievable. The connection was there with Baker Mayfield. Some guys went down. Mike Evans got hurt. Godwin got hurt, right? And then Emeka Egbuka was great. And then the second half, it just became crickets for him. He's wide receiver 29. So it's one of two things. Either he's appropriately priced here, or Laquon, we're getting a huge discount on a guy that you already saw the flashes of, and now you're just waiting for year two with the assumption, I guess, maybe that Mike Evans moves on at this stage, and it might be best for all parties at this point. Where are you at when it comes to Emeka Egbuka and his value at 29?
29 feels like a value because we're strapping talent to the reason why it's a value, right? Like we're looking at what he did in the beginning of the season, but then fell off. He fell off because of situational things, injuries. Baker Mayfield not being himself, him suffering injuries himself to a shoulder. And it's like a lot of the offense kind of just had this up and down misidentity week to week. But Emeka Egbuka, to me, I do feel like eventually during the summer, we may take a little jump on him, take a little risk, because we remember what he was able to put off. I'm sorry if you hear the fire trucks. There's always fires here in California. I just want to know that you're safe. I am always going to be safe, brother. But listen,
I need to get out of the house or something. Just, we'll put on... We'll put the pause on the show.
This is like clockwork in this area. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, it happens, man.
Fire content only, baby. That's why they out here.
That's the problem. The content's always been fire with you for so many years. Eventually, they're going to find you.
Emeka Egbuka, I do think that we are going to jump in this sophomore bag with him and not really try to remember on the back end of the season, because we've seen him at the absolute heights. And even if Mike Evans does move on, this just opens up more opportunity for him to get on the field, and we can go into camp now knowing he's a starter. I think Jalen McMillan being back as well is going to contribute to this offense. So they're going to have some nice pieces, going into this offseason where guys have a year under the belt. They got the experience now. They see the mistakes. We just hope Baker Mayfield shows up as the MVP in the first 5 weeks.
Well, that's the other thing too. Like Baker Mayfield clearly was playing hurt down the stretch too. He had some issues there too. I mean, they got off to such a great start together. So that in mind, Jake, if he is wide receiver 29 come August, I will be having a lot of exposure to Emeka Egbuka. How do you feel about him?
I feel like there's a lot of factors as of today. I actually have him as a wide receiver 3 because you brought it up, Mike Evans. And the one name neither of you guys mentioned, Chris Godwin's still there. And Chris Godwin was healthy in the second half of the season. And Chris Godwin looked like, oh, by the way, even with Baker Mayfield's issues, still had his connection. And you talk about these numbers, I'll give you the numbers. So the first 5 games with Egbuka and Baker Mayfield, 92% of his passes were on target to Egbuka. After that, 72%. Egbuka went from those first 5 games of 25 receptions, 445 yards, and 5 touchdowns to the rest of the season, 37, 485, and 5. Basically, in his first 5 games, that's what he did for the rest of the year after that. And I know some of it's Baker Mayfield, but part of that, too, is Mike Evans was out there in games 1 through 3. And then it took 2 games for Egbuka to kind of fall off. But then Godwin came back and started looking healthy. And that's why I bring all this up, is to say that, I think Egbuka's talent is legit. I said this last year. This is coming from somebody who was on Egbuka as a top tier wide receiver in that draft. I just think that 29? That's too low if Mike Evans is gone. And I just don't know. We talked about it, Joe. We did the free agent show. I actually think there's better spots for Mike Evans next year, not just because of Mike Evans, but because what it would do for Egbuka. Egbuka with Godwin, I would have as a top 24 wide receiver. And I do think McMillan would be a factor, as Laquon said. I do think he'll be a significant wide receiver 3.
J-Mac.
Yeah. At wide receiver 3 on the team, not wide receiver 3 in fantasy, to be clear. But if Mike Evans comes back because he just wants to finish his career and the Buccaneers just want to bring him back for a swan song, we're looking back at the Bears situation now, and it's just tough for him to get there. So this actually might end up being too high if Evans is back.
I'm not as bullish as you are on Godwin. He had one great game against Miami in the second half. That was his one wide receiver 1 finish. Everything else was 24 or worse. I don't know.
It's not the fantasy part of him. It's what he takes away from the opportunities.
No, absolutely. But again, healthy Chris Godwin's not something we've seen a lot of in the last 3 years. I just feel like that's another issue. And
if Evans is gone and Chris Godwin gets hurt again, then Egbuka's potentially wide receiver 1.
And look, Egbuka is 29. You have to go all the way down. I think it was 37 where 37 is where Godwin is. That's significant difference there. I think the market's telling you that Egbuka is the future. Luther Burden is he the future for the Bears? Another guy that had some heavy draft capital, ECR wide receiver 23. Is he ready to be the alpha dog there, you think? Or is it just still another one to choose your own adventure on a weekly basis with the Bears, Jake?
It's wait one more year because they can't get away from DJ Moore unless they find somebody that's willing to trade something. And that's still a hell of a dead cap hit if they do trade him because they're still on the hook for some of it. It's not as bad, but it's miserable. Like they can't get rid of DJ Moore straight up. Like maybe they can work the contract, but if they restructure it, he's still with the team. And that's the issue here is like, and this is from another one that I was a big fan of Luther Burden, a lot more than most people that were on Burden, that even they liked him. I still thought that he was knocking on that tier 1 door for the draft, and you saw it and you saw what he could do. But let's also talk about his situation. Rome Odunze wasn't healthy at the end of the season. Colston Loveland, which we're going to talk about later in the show, broke out at the end of the season. There's just a glory hog of options for Caleb Williams to turn to. And it's just, will Luther Burden get 20% of the targets over the course of the entire season with DJ Moore still around? Yeah, DJ Moore should fall to being the third option with Odunze, a healthy Odunze, and a healthy Burden. But we also have Loveland entering his second season, even with Cole Kmet likely gone. So it's the factor of too many options, which is great for the Bears in real life, but for us in fantasy, it just kind of sucks.
All right, Luther Burden in 2026, sophomore year. Laquon, what do you see in store?
It's more of what we saw last season because, like Jake said, they can't get rid of DJ Moore. I mean, honestly, it's too many mouths to feed, and Caleb needs to find a way to complete the ball also. It's one of those things that, hey, how valuable are these targets going to be for Luther Burden on a week-to-week basis to be a wide receiver 3 in the sense of where he will be drafted, where he's at right now? This is one of the hype trains that started immediately after the season ended. And I'm not ready to jump on this hype train yet because I think folks are going to pull him up even higher, even with an existing DJ Moore. This is one of those situations, like if they're like how I operate, if there's a long line and I've been standing in this line too long, I'm ready to move to the next. Another train will be on the way. That's one of the situations that I'm looking at with Luther Burden. I love the talent. I love him as a prospect. I was one of the few people that, hey, he could be very explosive in a Ben Johnson offense if Rome Odunze and DJ Moore didn't exist. Like, this is one of the first pieces that he was building this giant, masterpiece of an offense behind Caleb Williams, then yeah, I'm full on board for it. But it's a matter of opportunity, a matter of that target share that Jake was talking about. I don't even think he cracks 15% of the targets next year. You got to wait one more year for them to get DJ Moore out of the way, or they figure something out.
Well, one more wide receiver too is a sophomore this year. You really didn't see him much. A little bit sprinkled at the end of the year for the Chargers was Tre Harris. Now, I liked this pick originally. I like Tre Harris as a prospect too. I thought I was like, okay, this is a good fit here. We have to probably wait a year at least, because Keenan Allen's going to be there. I did not see the QJ renaissance coming at me in 2025. That one I was not prepared for. So I don't know if I want to bet on it or not. But again, this is another crowded situation, but a much cheaper one than Burden. So because it's so much cheaper, is it appealing to you, Laquon?
Yes, I love Tre Harris. And Jake, I think you were on the timeline as well talking Tre Harris as well. I think we were aligning. I feel like Tre Harris last year, the little flashes we saw was like, okay, the future is bright. He's in the right situation. Mm-hmm. Justin Herbert is his quarterback for X amount of years. I think Tre Harris with another experience year at getting on the field with Keenan Allen out of the way, we might be looking at a high-end wide receiver too, and that is in the future for him. I think, honestly, Lam McConkey, he'll be the function. He'll be the operation of the offense. We know he'll be the target share, but they need that number 2 on the perimeter that can stretch the field and beat guys as well. And I understand that at the end of the day, this is a sophomore wide receiver. We don't have much evidence of him being a full-time wide receiver. We see Keandre Lambert-Smith in the preseason making plays as well in the same exact role that Tre Harris has had. So there's a little competition during summer camp that we need to be watching. But at the end of the day, if Tre Harris is sitting there for free for me in drafts, I'm grabbing him up because I just love the player he is.
Jake, I always had massive concerns about Mike McDaniel as a head coach, but as an offensive mind, I'm thrilled and really excited to see what he could do with a quarterback like Justin Herbert. Like this is a big boy quarterback. Okay. There's no limitations here in terms of what he could do physically. And you put him in this offense, and to me, you have that kind of offensive mind working with a quarterback like Justin Herbert, who's already proven in the NFL he can throw for 5,000 yards and make the big throws and do what he's got to do. Can Tre Harris be an emerging star that maybe nobody's looking enough at in 2026 drafts?
I think if we're going to quantify it with free, nobody's looking at, Absolutely. Tre Harris. Yeah, Laquon's right. I missed on Tre Harris. I thought Tre Harris would be the number 2 for this team. I really thought that was the talent here. But now, as
Maybe
you're saying,
a year early.
No. Also, a year after we
never
like
wrong,
just
just
up,
early.
Quinshon Judkins. Nobody saw that coming, and we were all written him off. But third-year wide receiver that finally broke through, and finally, by the way, learned how to catch a little bit. Still had some problems at times, but got his hands and figured out. Eric Ebron figured out the hands part. So yeah, sure, Keenan Allen's gone, but now there's a whole other piece that we didn't even bring up yet so far. Another name, Oronde Gadsden at tight end. They just have weapons, and the one thing I'll go back to Mike McDaniel with is, again, great offensive mind. He can get a lot out of this team, but just like with the Dolphins, you're talking about a funneled target share, most likely. And again, the running is going to bleed the clock and the amount of plays being hired. So if Tre Harris is the clear number 2, Gadsden's kind of like a hit or miss tight end, cool, thumbs up. If Quentin Johnston's still factored in and Oronde Gadsden's factored in and Tre Harris is factored in, now we're going back to the Bears situation of it's just the amount of volume there. And we're talking about Tua just 2 years ago, threw 4,700 yards and almost 30 touchdowns. And it's so concentrated in the McDaniel offense. So there can be an ancillary piece if we're talking DFS, best ball, fun stuff like that. But unless we get that clear picture, that's why Tre Harris is certainly valuable for free right now, absolutely buy in, but it could be a non-factor because he might not even be the second option on this team.
I already have him on my Dynasty team. I think he's a buy low in Dynasty. And speaking of Dynasty managers, we just launched the brand new Fantasy Dynasty channel for Fantasy Pros over on YouTube. So we got the rookie stuff, we got the super flex strategy, we got startup drafts going, we got trade advice, we got everything. So if you haven't already, run over to the channel, Fantasy Pros Dynasty channel on YouTube, hit subscribe, support the team. A lot of Dynasty talk. We know there's a lot of Dynasty players out there too, so we want you to be a part of that channel. It's growing very quickly as well, to no one's surprise. All right, let's talk about quarterbacks here. Tyler Shough, old man Shough, somehow was able to defy gravity, maybe. I mean, he did. He finishes QB 10 from week 8 to the end of the season. I don't think a lot of people realize that. And Jake, we did a lot of shows together where we kept saying, we come together on Monday mornings and go, every week Tyler Shough plays a little better. And then we come back the next week and say, you know what? He played even a little better this week. And it feels like that was going. And I guess the question is, in 2026, do we go and revert because there's no film on him and people find out his weaknesses and they expose him? Or does he grow into something even more in that steady, slow climb that we saw? A quarterback who got a lot more reps in college, which seems to be benefiting him at the NFL level.
Yeah, had more 300-yard passing games, Tyler Shough, or the next quarterback we're going to talk about, Jaxson Dart. Shough, because Dart had none. So yeah. I just gave you an idea. It's just,
well, in all fairness, how many games did he play with Malik Neighbors? So
it doesn't matter. How many games did he play with only Chris Olave? That being Shough. Yeah, Shough had nothing. The thing
blue
is,
tent got a lot of yards with
the thing with Shough is top 16 is a fair spot because he also runs. Like we're not talking about, when we talk about Dart, we'll talk about that as a whole separate topic, I'm sure. But the fact is that Shough adds that on the ground, and you're looking at the fact that he could probably give you 400 or 500 in the ground, a couple of touchdowns over a full season, maybe even a little bit more if they let him run free. But it'll be interesting to see what happens in year 2. But as a mid QB2, with what he did with only Olave for all intents and purposes, it was Juwan Johnson, the trade of Shaheed, and then they were trying to fill that spot. It was Devon Vele for a spot, but then he got hurt again. So we all assume that they're going to find a way, whether via the draft or making money in Monopoly, to try and figure out their salary cap to bring somebody in there alongside Olave. But as much as we laughed at Shough for being as old as he was, as you just said, the one thing that he showed was the polish that he came in from college with. So I don't think there's a high ceiling. I don't think Shough's ever going to be inside the top 10 conversation. But as a mid QB2, because he will run too, I think absolutely he deserves the conversation as like a top 16, 18 quarterback.
Laquon, he's at 19. Sam Darnold's at 22. That just doesn't seem fair to me or right to me. Does it feel right to you?
It feels right to me. I mean, we talked about it. Shough was out there shucking it for fantasy. Like, we seen my boy run a 34-yard touchdown out of the pocket, making magic under pressure. This is the type of player we're seeing. Like, my boy is poised in the pocket. I was just so wowed how comfortable he looked. Like, in the first game against the Rams, like, I'm like watching this guy like, wait, hold up. This is the guy that took over Spencer Rattler. Oh, okay. You throwing downfield. Okay, you find a Juwan Johnson. And Juwan Johnson was one of my summer must-draft tight ends because I felt and knew that he was going to have that connection with Kellen Moore. And this is the system that I think Kellen Moore is going to map around Tyler Shough and his strengths, because we see he can get out of the pocket, roll out, and run and get up vertical. We know he can throw the deep ball, really deep, pretty ball at that. So bringing somebody in this free agency, like Jake mentioned, them playing with Monopoly money, they have in the past have been kicking this can down the road for years, man. They got $65 million in dead cap. That is insane. And they signed Brandon Cooks, Justin Reed, extended Juwan Johnson and Chase Young. How are they doing this? I don't know. With the cap and greasing, I do think they'll find some wiggle room to bring in another piece that they need, because, again, there's some wide receivers out there. I was whispering Romeo Doubs to the New Orleans. That would be a perfect fit,
like that.
for them to have that wide receiver too, acting as a 1B to Chris Olave. So I think Tyler Shough, I'm all in. Top 12, I'll say. Top 12, Tyler Shough next year.
All right, Jaxson Dart obviously is going to have a huge hype train attached to him because the rushing equity, the new head coach, the Giants are kind of fun. Not a statement that I've said in my lifetime very much, because even when the
next
Giants
year's
were good,
Patriots.
Well, even when the Giants were good, most of the time they were pretty dull. Let's be honest. Like, even in the 80s, they had great defense, but kind of dull.
See what my mom got me for Christmas?
What?
Saquon, that's my dog Barkley with the Giants helmet. I'm struggling to play backwards.
Well, you're usually struggling, but there you go. I hope everybody on the podcast audio version enjoyed that sojourn.
No, that's why they have to watch the video.
I can't say.
And they must go watch it on
T-shirts. So, look, Quan, here's the question. They're going to be excited because Scadaboo's going to be back, and Neighbor's going to be back, and Harbaugh's going to be there. Yeah. When does the hype train run out of control for Jaxson Dart for you? Like, he is QB7 already. It's ahead of Justin Herbert, which I would not do. It's ahead of Brock Purdy, Caleb Williams, Trevor Lawrence. Do you think that's too much too soon for Jaxson Dart, especially with some of the concerns you have in terms of style of play that we just talked about?
Put it like this. I get it. Because that boy averaging 20 fantasy points per game in the games that he was available, that's top 5 potential right there. We know he can get out of the pocket. We know he can hit the long ball. We saw that connection in Ole Miss with him and Tre Harris. Like, we know it's there. So with a healthy Neighbors, this is a dangerous formula for an offense that can produce a ton of fantasy points. And I think you do bake in the risk of him having these concussions piling up. 50% of his games, he was in the medical tent. Like, this is all risk baked into that QB7. But I think, honestly, if he gives us a full season, we may be talking about him in the top 5, because, again, we've seen the attitude he has, this mindset. He was questioned about him taking too many hits or sliding or running out of bounds. He was like, hey, we ain't playing soccer, which I take as very disrespect. You say that to
I know you're a big soccer guy.
Yeah.
I wore my AFC disrespect. Richmond sweatshirt for you today, which also you can only see on the YouTube.
Yes. But I do feel like he's going to have that conversation around him for the rest of his career. But the play that we've seen in the games that he's available, how can you not strap that top 5 conversation to him?
All right. Let's talk about the cost. Jaxson Dart for you. Jake Ciely, you're willing to pay what it is because it's already pretty steep.
Yeah, because I have him right there at QB7. If you look at the fact that there's a lot of factors you can put into Jaxson Dart, and the biggest one being for the detractors is the head. Like, if he gets concussions, if he doesn't stop trying to take contact, like legit, like trying, like him and Cam Scadaboo, just stop. Like, I don't know what they had, like they watched too much of the Juggernaut, whatever it is, but stop. Just learn to slide, learn to avoid contact, step out of the bounds. You can go out of bounds. You don't have to keep staying in. Watch some Michael Vick tape, dance on the sideline and step out, and they give the extra 15 yards penalty as you step 1 foot out of bounds. But the point being, 487 and 9 on the ground compared to the 2,200 yards, 15 and 5 passing. Almost 43% of his production in fantasy came from rushing. Now, I know people are like, well, that's risky to bank on. And obviously what I just said about the injuries. But the interesting part about it is almost 17% goal to goal rushes and 22% goal line rush attempts for the entire season for the Giants. That's not just games he played. That's the entire season of the Giants. And the reason I bring that up is because Lamar Jackson's not a huge touchdown maker, but under Harbaugh, 25 and 35% for those numbers in 2024 when he wasn't even running. Like, that was his huge year passing, obviously, as well. And I'm not even saying that Dart's going to be a huge passer because there's Malik Neighbors, questions of whether he's ready for week 1, questions of what's going to be the number 2 Wan'Dale Robinson or a draft pick or free agency. But I really like the 15-5 touchdown and interception because he threw smart. And I think that if you look at this, look at Jaden Daniels' rookie season. He basically had about 3,820 something touchdowns and just a mid-level, that's a mid-level passing season. And he was a top 5 quarterback because of the rushing. And I think that's what Laquon was bringing up too, is that the healthy games he played the entire time, the running made him a top 5 quarterback. The risk is you don't have a quarterback for half the season. We're playing the Anthony Richardson game. But the upside legitimately is top 5, and that's why I would take him at 7. Because I'd rather chase for the upside than to get QB 9.
All right, let's talk about Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders here for a second. Obviously, Ward, real struggle bus in the beginning. They fired the head coach. Then, towards the second half of the season, obviously, improvement, right? We cut down the turnovers. That was really good. Shedeur Sanders didn't get his shot until the second half of the season. A couple moments that you could say that, gave you some hope. Jake, I'm going to ask you this question, put you this way. Who has the bigger fantasy impact in 2026? Is it Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders in their current situations as they build out on bad teams?
It's Cam Ward, and then it's Cam Ward, and then it's Cam Ward. There's no Shedeur Sanders in this conversation, and it really comes down to it wasn't just what we saw from Cam Ward in the second season, where he showed the talent that had people excited. Yeah, that's what I meant. We heard the reports. Brian Dable wanted to send the freaking farm to go trade for him, and Tennessee said no. Dable comes over as somebody who we saw what he did with the offense with the Bills, and now he can go back to being one of the head coaches that was a bad experience as a head coach. He was better as an offense coordinator, and we've seen Mike McDaniel's doing this. Everybody's praising Mike McDaniel, as we did on this show, going to the Chargers, but nobody's talking about the fact, what if Brian Dable gets back to being what Brian Dable can do, and he's over his head as a head coach, but he's great as an offensive coordinator. And we talked during, again, this is another, I'll reference that free agency show again, is he also had Darius Slayton a thing for years with the Giants because he loves having his quarterback take attempts downfield. They added Alec Pierce or even figure something out with IU Manor takes a step forward as the deep threat with a Wan'Dale Robinson tight in DK, and maybe they even bring in Wan'Dale Robinson. Anyway, the point being is they're going to add something to this receiving core, maybe even get rid of Calvin Ridley, and take what Cam Ward is doing well and build Brian Dable's scheme as the offensive coordinator for Cam Ward. I think Cam Ward could legitimately be in the top 15 next year in fantasy.
All right.
Yes.
Laquon, what are your thoughts there? By the way, I like the Robert Saleh hire. I also like that all the other coaches that he hired after himself also balled.
I was about to say, did you get a contract offer?
Bro, I mean, you would have thought that after the offensive coordinator comments I made, the fact of my prolific flag football resume that I put together.
Are they sponsored by Banana Boat? Do we know? Just got to protect those
I don't
domes.
know, but all I will say is that I have a pretty damn good competitive tournament flag football resume.
They should bring back the Kangol hats, the baby blue ones that would match the team.
The Sam Jackson Kangol look is so good. They should all wear those. That's such a good look.
That's before my time. Oh my God.
You saw the Sam Jackson and the Kangols.
You're not 12.
Stop it, bro. Don't even play around like that.
I ain't mean the age on my fault. Look, I got the grays out. I mean, all the video watchers and, the audio listeners, go check out the video. You see the little patch right here. It's for wisdom. But Cam Ward, Dylon. But listen, Jake.
Just for the record, the producers, if you're watching this, I want you to, hopefully in that conversation, you're inserting the picture of all of the bald head coach or coaches, I should say, at the Titans.
Yes.
I want that. I want that visual. I'm going to drop it in there for the guy.
But
make us all
like
bald.
Jake was talking about, Brian Daboll is a key piece of why I think Cam Ward has that type of ceiling that Jake is talking about. I'm looking to take a leap forward into top 10 conversation. And here's why. This is another first-round quarterback that Brian Daboll gets to work with. I mean, he's had success in the first year with all his quarterbacks except for Josh Allen, believe it or not. But look at Daniel Jones at 22. 700 yards on the ground. My guy was QB 9. Not saying Cam Ward is going to be as mobile, but we got a great look of where we've seen flashes of Dan Jones being able to attack deep downfield. Then you look at Jaxson Dart last year that we just talked about. He had top 5 potential that we were putting him in that conversation if he stays healthy. I think with Cam Ward finishing on the back end of the season, the plays that we've seen, the game against the Seahawks is the game I keep watching over and over. He had the 4th best fantasy performance against that defense, by the way. And I think we honestly look at what Cam Ward possesses on that utility belt. It's the football IQ, it's the confidence, and it's obviously we need upgrades on the perimeter. And Emeka Egbuka led the league in drop rate. Like, he cannot drop the ball anymore. I think Emeka Egbuka is one of the great, perimeter wide receivers that were coming out of this class that I think he has the likes to take a step forward next year. Then you look at DK. He's a playmaker, kind of like a gadget guy. I think more of a special teams guy. But like Jake said, what are they going to do with Calvin Ridley? I mean, he has a roster bonus that's triggering March 17th. So that's a month away. That's coming up. So I think they honestly should keep Calvin Ridley because we know what he possesses, but I don't think he's a 1 anymore. I think he's more of a 2, a distraction, a 1B, because he has the speed. He has the hands when he's available. It's just more, is it here for him? Is he emotionally invested anymore? It's Tennessee. I get it. But Cam Ward, his future is bright, man. So I am all in on the Cam Ward hype train. I'm going as further as saying, like, in super flex leagues, he is my QB too. In 1 quarterback leagues, if I want to get cute and I wait deep late in the drafts, I might take him as my QB1 just based on the evidence we have seen with Brian Daboll with these quarterbacks.
I think that's where a good head coach comes into play too. And I think Robert Saleh is a good football guy who got a raw deal with the Jets. And I think him bringing that stability, bringing some of those players back and saying, hey, look, I don't care if it's a Tennessee. It's going to be a different kind of Tennessee now. And Cam Ward is an incredible worker. That's what I like about Cam Ward. He's a hard-working kid. He takes it real seriously. All right, last position here. It's actually a really good one. It's the tight ends. And the tight ends is some real talent that came into the league last year. You got Colston Loveland. You got Tyler Warren, who looked like a beast, and Harold Fannin Jr., who also looks like a star in the making, right? These are 3 really high-quality young players, all entering their sophomore year. Colston Loveland, number 3 tight end on the list right now. Fannin, number 5. Tyler Warren, number 6. I'm guessing it's number 6 because we're still waiting to figure out what the quarterback situation ends up being in Indianapolis. So, Laquon, I'll put this to you. Who is your favorite investment of those 3 guys based upon the early rankings?
I got to say Harold Fannin Jr. I've been rocking him for some time now. I mean, February 28th, 2025, I said he will be a top 5 fantasy tight end, and I would dye my hair blonde if so. So the blonde hair is on the way, Joe and Jake. So I got to ride with Fannin, man, because I think Warren, like you said, the question marks in Indy. I like Riley Leonard, by the way. I think they should stick with him, but Daniel Jones coming back from an Achilles at 29 years old, that doesn't sound great. We've seen that be the chef kiss and end game for a lot of these quarterbacks, Aaron Rodgers, Kirk Cousins in recent examples. But Loveland at 3, it's interesting because there's a lot of question marks after Brock Bowers and Trey McBride. Kittle's hurt. Is Kyle Pitts staying in Atlanta? I mean, when we're looking at all these other guys that are falling later, like the Sam Laporta, is he back? Like, there's a lot of question marks after the 2 tier 1 tight ends. So it's like Loveland feels like may not be the not sexiest pick, but the safest pick because we've seen him explode on the back end of the season. There's obviously a plan for him to be involved as the function of this offense. So I'm happy with him at 3, but he's not my favorite. It's Harold Fannin.
Okay.
I think he's going to surpass that.
I got to say, Jake, like the 3, it's a little jarring at first, but if you were paying attention to the end of the year for the Bears, I think it's right. I'm actually on the Loveland train. How about you?
So I am at 4, but that's only because assuming health, I would go with Tucker Kraft at 3. That's a big one. And obviously we have to see also, they might make some moves in free agency at wide receiver that surprise us. And then that changes things as well. But I think the bigger take here is I go Loveland, Fannin, Warren in order. There's a lot of assumptions we have to make with all 3 of them. And I think the bigger takeaway that I would say is that it's tier 1 McBride and Bowers, and then pick your poison if you want. Like, whoever you like, if you want to chase this Laporta situation because of their OC coming in with Petzing and what he did with McBride with Arizona, and all of a sudden, Laporta's back, and now Jameson Williams falls off, and all of a sudden Laporta's back inside the top 5. Point being, there's a multitude of options that you could pick and make your own case for. I'm not going to argue too much Laquon on this. I would go with Loveland, mostly because once we saw things start to clear out one person, that we saw how much of a factor Loveland can be, especially down the road and in the playoff. Like, the target share at the end of the season was ridiculous for Loveland. And I mean, he was putting up double-digit games per week. But I brought up the DJ Moore issue before. If DJ Moore is still around, Odunze is healthy? What happens with other pieces on this team? So he's got the target share problem. Fannon's got the quarterback problem. And even with the similar probable offense that they'll be running, you still have, is it Sanders? Is it going to be him and Fannin together for the year? And then Warren is Daniel Jones back? Because if they go back to Anthony Richardson, which I do think deserves another chance, maybe not with the Colts, but if it's Daniel Jones, cool. Tyler Warren, you can make a case that he's the best one. But if it's not Daniel Jones and it's Anthony Richardson, then we're like, okay, hold on. We might be looking at Tyler Warren even being behind Laporta and Pitts. So I have no problem, whoever you want to take. I lean slightly Loveland, but I can see a case for all three. I guess that's a three-way straddled fence that I just did, which I don't know if it's possible.
Sounds dangerous.
It says very uncomfortable, but the point being is they're all great options just behind that top tier.
Yeah, and look, Arondé Gadsden at 10-2. We talked about what he could be potentially in that Mike
I'm at 9,
offense.
yeah.
I got to tell you, this is the best young group of tight end players I've ever seen in the league at this juncture for fantasy ever. Like, I'm looking.
But you know what that means, right?
That means they're all going to get hurt.
None of them are going to finish 3, and we're going to see like Brenton Strange as the third tight end next year.
No, we're going to see some of these rookies.
Yeah,
we're going to see some of these rookies.
Maybe Sadiq. We'll see.
But Jake Tonjes when Kittle's out for the year.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
No. I want to end on that note. It's a good tight end class. Be excited about it. Don't let Jake rain on your parade. Great stuff, guys. Looking ahead to the second year for all the rookies from 2025. A lot of great stuff here. Who's your favorite sophomore to have a great 2026? Drop your comments below in the YouTube channel. I want to hear your picks. And of course, shout out to Laquon Jones from NFL Network for joining us today, and Jake Ciely from The Athletic. Great stuff, boys. Really fun conversation. We could do this for hours, but we won't. One is enough. That'll do it for us, but the story of the game goes on. For Jake and Laquon, I'm Joey P. We'll see you next time, kids.